Hello. How is everyone doing? Hello, Bana and Mona. Hello, Melissa and Reham. Hello, Sally and Bana and Mona and Delilah and Hossein. Hello. Good to see you again, Hossein. How have you been? I think I have a pretty some interesting things to share with you today. I've been doing some interesting research about etymology in a different and new way, which maybe might be interesting for some of you. You may ask me more than one question, Mona. What's your question? Hossein, I swear you must be Iran's biggest Nicki Minaj fan. You should message her and tell her that. It had been shipped in 13 pieces. What does shipped mean here? It means shipped like a package is shipped, right? So that means like maybe they had a motorcycle, right? And the motorcycle is too big to ship it as one motorcycle. So instead, they break it into parts, 13 parts, and ship each one separately. They ship the 13 pieces to you, right? So it means to send. They sent it to you, to ship it to you. That is a perfect segue into what I'm about to talk about today. Because, Mona, the word ship comes from Old Norse, an old Viking type Northern European language. Came from the word skib or skip, which meant a boat. And why do we call shipping things like a boat? Because they used to use boats to send things, right? So to send or transport something by boat was to ship it. Yeah. So that's part of what I'm going to do today is I had an idea a while ago that I've been researching for a while about how to teach etymology historically by time period or important event, and to show you how certain events through time have created words. And that's kind of cool. And again, because it's tied to history, history is a story. So, yeah. Etymology. 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 Yeah, there you go. Etymology. Etymology. Etymology means the history of where words come from and how they've changed over time. And it happens to be something that I have been studying for most of my life. I mean, since I was 15, I've been learning a little bit about etymology. And it's a hobby and an interest of mine, so I know more than most people do about it. And I find it to be very interesting, and I think it's a very good way to help you to learn vocabulary, because it's a much more interesting way to learn vocabulary than memorization. Memorizing is boring. So, this, I hope, will be more interesting. So, let's see. I've got, how many categories did I do? I can't remember. I think I have about 7 or 8 categories. We're going to talk about how words came from, let's see. First, we're going to talk about how words came from the Viking invasions. The Viking invasions of England and the British Isles. So that was during the 8th and 11th century. And then, after we finish talking about the words that come from the Vikings, we're going to talk about the Norman conquest, which is around 1066. And the Normans were early French people that invaded and took over England, and then French, or an early version of French, became the language of Britain, and so we got a lot of words from that. And after we do that, then we'll do the age of chivalry and medieval romance, which is the 12th to 15th century. And during that time, we got many, many, many words like chivalry and knight and virtue and honor. Those words were all kind of important words that came out of those time periods. And after that, we're going to do the scientific revolution from the 16th century to the 18th century. And we'll talk about the words that came from that time period and their etymology. And I could go on. The age of piracy is the 17th to 18th century, and there are many interesting words that came from that time period as well. And then after that, the Industrial Revolution. So, yeah, I've been doing a lot of ChatGPT research based on my ideas to help me find all the words from those time periods to create a story for you that's interesting to try to learn. Pirate stories are fun, and there are many pirate words that we got from that time period. So, the Vikings are from where? The Vikings are from Norseland, Norse meaning North Europe, right? So, Sweden and Denmark and Finland and those countries up there, those countries are, that's what we call them now. But a long time ago, that area was just called Norseland, meaning Northland. And that's where the Vikings were largely from. Okay? You started learning the American accent and your jaw started aching in 10 minutes. Maybe. That could be. We have big mouths when we speak well. So let's get started. Let me just tell it to finish. Ooh, then we've got the American West after the Industrial Revolution. Many, many words came from the American West. So instead of approaching etymology from a standpoint of root words, I'm approaching etymology from a standpoint of historical birth based on time, period, and event. So, yeah. Anyway, let's begin. Let me go back to the beginning of my entirely huge list of words, and I will share the screen. It might be too small for you to see well because I don't know if I can make it small enough, or big enough, sorry, with all of the information on here. But let's try. Let me make it bigger here, and then I'll share the screen. Let me check on my YouTube folks here. Hello, Miguel. Is it still sounding funny, Miguel? I want to check my effects really quickly. Let me make sure all of my effects are off. Miguel, if you still think it sounds funny, let me know. I want to try to play with that a little bit today. Miguel said that the sound on my YouTube is different than the sound on my Hello Talk, and I don't understand how that's possible, but we're trying to work that out. I hope you're doing well, Miguel. Okay, so we're going to start with the Viking invasions. Share screen. Okay. So the Viking invasions. The Vikings were a group of people that lived in northern Europe around the 8th, 11th century. Before that and after that as well. And they were farmers, but they were also raiders. And the word raider is a word that means to attack and to plunder and pillage, which means to attack and try to steal anything you can, take anything you can, treasure anything that's valuable. And they also moved there, or tried to move there, to steal land, to or take land. We'll call it take land. Everybody took land back then, to farm. So, if you've ever seen the Vikings series on TV, it's a good series, and it's not entirely accurate, but it's pretty good. It's better than nothing, and it's quite good in some ways. It gives you a good idea about what the Vikings were like. So, the Vikings, historical background. If you don't like history, you might be bored, but I love history, so here we go. 793 AD, the Lindisfarne raid, and all the way to 1066 AD, which was the Norman conquest. And first they would raid monasteries. They used to raid the monasteries and steal all the treasure from the monasteries. And they had a bunch of fights and a bunch of treaties, and they tried to work together, and the kings sometimes would hire the Vikings to try to attack other people together, and, it's a complicated time period. But let's get to the words. Here are some of the words that come from Old Norse. Like, for example, the word sky. The word sky in Old Norse actually means clouds. It originally meant clouds. Yeah. So now we have that word. The word window. The word window also comes from Old Norse, vindauga, which meant wind eye. It meant wind eye. Vindauga. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. It's the eye for wind, right? In your house, you would carve a hole so the wind could come in. Anyway, Hello, Asha. Thank you for that. I appreciate that the comment. However, I can't come every day. It's a little too much to come every day, but I'll try to start coming more. But Asha, I really need to start focusing a little bit more on myself. So I have a lot of things I need to accomplish, and I can't accomplish them if I'm always here, unfortunately. But I'm glad you like my teaching and my methods. And look, there's Amir. Hello, Amir. Long time no see. Good to see you again. I saw your message the other day. RK, English comes from many, 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 many languages. English comes from Latin, Greek, French. It comes from Spanish, Italian. It comes from Norse. It comes from Arabic. It comes from Persian. It comes from many, many languages put together. Okay? That's part of what I'm teaching. All right? English words come from different places, and if you know where they come from, sometimes there's an interesting story about why we have that word from a different culture, right? So, anyway, I appreciate that, Asha. I will try. I will see what I can do. Okay? All right, let's go to the next word. The word knife. Knife is a cutting instrument, right? And it's kind of funny because we pronounce it knife, but actually the original pronunciation, they did pronounce the K. It would be knife or conifer was the way they would pronounce it a long time ago, conifer. And it's funny because if you watch the TV show Vikings, there's a character on the show, and his name is Canute. And it's spelled K-N-U-T, Canute. Because, yeah, originally the K was pronounced. Why do we not pronounce it now? Because language changes over time, pronunciations change over time, but we keep the spelling so that we know the history. Yeah. So there you go. Husband. Husband is actually the word hus means house, and so it's householder, the holder of the house, the bond. So bond, B-A-N-D comes from the word B-O-N-D, bond. It's the bond of the house. Who holds the house is the householder. So the husband. That's where that word comes from. He's the bonder of the house. And then it just became a word that was associated with married men because married men bought a house. Yeah, right? Meaningful, right? There you go. Husband, house bond. The bonder of the house. The word egg is just from the Norse word egg. You know, so again, that one's almost directly. Who knows? That might be pronounced exactly the same way it was back then. That would be kind of crazy. That's another chapter I should add to my book. Which words have maintained their pronunciation over a long time period? Like maybe the word egg. That would be interesting. Ransack. To ransack means to search someplace very thoroughly. And again, this is a word that comes from the Vikings. When they would attack, they would ransack. And to ransack usually means to search in a very, very chaotic way, right? They ransacked the house means they came in and they threw everything around looking for whatever they could find, right? They weren't careful. They weren't nice about it. They destroyed things. Anything that wasn't valuable, they destroyed. And anything that was valuable, they took. That's to ransack. And look, what does ransack mean? Ran means house, and saka means to seek or investigate. So ransack means to go to that house and investigate, search it for anything valuable. Ransack. That's kind of cool, I think. Berserk. Berserk. She went berserk. He went berserk. It means crazy, like mad, usually out of control, like a frenzy, right? And this word comes from the Norse word berserker. And the berserkers were special warriors that would fight almost like they're in a frenzy, like they're out of control, like they're crazy. There are many, many stories about the berserkers, myths and legends about how fierce and crazy and wild they looked when they would fight. And some people even think that they may have eaten some psychedelic mushrooms before battle in order to make them crazy. So when they would fight very, very crazily and wildly. And so to go berserk is now a word that means to go crazy. Okay, and then let's see. The next word, Thursday. Actually, the words Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday all come from Viking history, Norse history. Wednesday is Woden's Day. It was the day of Odin. It was to celebrate Odin, the all-father god of Viking history. And then Thursday was to celebrate the god Thor, the big handsome guy with the hammer that we see in the movies now. That was Thor's Day, Thursday. And then Friday is to celebrate Freya. And Freya was another famous goddess in Viking history. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday all come from Viking history. I'll try to zoom in a little bit more. Let's see. Is that any better? Yes, Ragnar Lothbrok. Ragnar. Okay, so the next word is give. To give means to hand over something, right? That comes from the old Norse word gefa. Right? So gefa, to give. Take, taka, gefa. Those were words that were meant take and give in Old Norse. Loose comes from the Old Norse word laus, meaning not tight. They had the Vikings were they were sailors. They were master sailors, and they built amazing boats. And when you build boats, you also need a lot of rope. Rope was important because you needed it for the sails, you needed it for the boats, you needed it for many, many, many reasons. So the word loose is important. You need your ropes to be tight. Bana says, and Saturday. Saturday is not from Viking Norse history. Saturday is actually from Sumerian history. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and... Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Those are from Sumerian history. Saturday is the day of Saturn. Sunday is the day of the sun. Monday is the day of the moon. Tuesday is actually from German history, the day of Two. Two was their version of the god Mars, the Roman god Mars. So there you go. There's all of the days. So actually, the Saturday, Sunday, Monday, those three, they have Sumerian and Roman roots. Okay, let's keep going. Scathe. Unscathed. He was scathed. Usually we say the word unscathed. So if you're in an accident, a car accident, someone will ask you, maybe someone will say, oh, it's so lucky that you came out unscathed. And that means unharmed, right? So to be scathed is harmed. And again, it comes from an Old Norse word. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Skaoi, something like that. Fellow. Fellow comes from the Old Norse word felagi. And die. the Norse word Deya. Hell comes from the Norse word hell, talking about the underworld, right, which was part of their history too. They had a history of the underworld like hell. Slaughter comes from the Norse word slatter, meaning butchered meat. To scrape from the Norse word skrapa. Scrub from the Norse word skrubba. Gawk, to look at something. To gawk at something is to look at something. Don't gawk means don't stare. Possibly from the Old Norse word ga, meaning to heed or look. The word wrong, vranger, means crooked, vranger, in Norse. Not correct, crooked. And then cake, from the Norse word kaka, meaning small, sweet baked breads. And that's still, in many Scandinavian languages, they still say that word that way. And then gust, a strong rush of wind, guster, a cold blast. So there you go. Those all are words that come from Old Norse in English. And we also have some grammatical influence from them as well. Third person plural pronouns like they, them, and their, we get that from the Norse languages, which replaced the Old English hie and kiora. And then words that have a plural S at the end, that's also a very common grammatical feature of Norse languages. And also simplified verb conjugations. Words from Latin and Romance languages have many, many conjugations, but Norse languages don't have as many, which is what we get from them grammatically. We don't have as many conjugations either. Let's see. Where does one and oneself come from? You mean speaking that way? Where does that originally come from? That's a hard one. I'm going to say that's possibly cross-cultural and possibly very hard to trace the history of because of how common it is to speak. It was very common to speak that way about yourself or about oneself a long time ago. We don't talk about that too much anymore, but we don't say, if one wants to pass the test, then one must study. But that's the way they used to talk a lot. And, if thou dost not sleep, thou dost harm thyself, right? Things like that. That's Old English language, which is more like talking about thyself and oneself. But I think that would be really hard to trace, but I will look into it later. I will look into it a little bit later. Zoom it a little bit more. I can try to zoom it a little bit more, but it's already zoomed pretty far on my screen. Is that better? Is that at all better? Let me see. It gets to a point on my screen where it's almost hard for me to read because it's off the screen. Okay, better, good. All right, and then look, place names. If you see a city or a village and the name of the village has the letters B-Y at the end, or T-H-O-R-P-E, or Thwaite, or Toft, those are all words that mean those were Viking villages at one point in time. Those were Norse settlements, right? So Grimsby and Whitby in England, those would be towns that were Norse towns. Scunthorpe, Braithwaite, and Lowestoft, those are places that were originally Norse settlements. right? So there you go. The Viking invasions contributed a lot of everyday vocabulary, especially action verbs like give and take and die. And then legal terms like fellow and scathe. That was a legal term back then. He was scathed. Scathing. A scathing review. That's another word, the way we use that word. The movie received a scathing review means a harmful review. It was a bad review. They said this is a terrible, terrible movie. Right? That'd be a scathing review. Okay? So there we go. There's category 1. And now we'll go to category 2. The Norman Conquest. 1066. So the French aristocracy, the rich people in France, they, because the Normans took over England, which at the time was Britain, because they took over, the language became French, or an early version of French. And it was spoken mostly by the rich people. And the rich people are who are in charge of language. So we got many, many words from that. So, for example, so these are key events that happened during that time. 1066, William, Duke of Normandy, defeated King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. Right? So then in 1066, after 1066, Norman French became the language of court, law, government, and the upper classes. And so many of the words we use in law are still reflecting this time period. And then we've got the reign of Henry II, Anglo-Norman language, which is a mix of the two languages, became more complete in the culture and in law. And let's see, then we had 1204, King John, and he lost Normandy, and that led to more English and French bilingualism around the area. And then again here, 1362, Statute of Pleading. English officially adopted in law courts, but French words remained embedded. So it wasn't until 1362 that they made English again the language of law, but they kept many of the French words. So let's look at those words. The word crown, the symbol of the monarchy. The word crown comes from the Old French word corona, which comes from the Latin word corona, meaning garland or wreath, right? They used to put a wreath around your head as a crown, right? And court, from the Latin word, from the Old French courte, and the Latin word cohortus, meaning a yard or enclosure, because that's where that's the word court used to mean your yard. So the original meaning of court is your yard, but to hold court was to a verb meaning to the king would come and bring all of his servants and followers for some kind of a official something, official meeting, official announcement, official performance, some kind of a thing. Yeah, so they would hold court. And so court in this case just meant a group of, or an area where people would be. In this case for law, right? Emma, I'm talking about history and etymology. I'm talking about the history of words. It's an advanced subject, but it might be interesting if you pay attention. The word judge comes from the Old French juge, or the Latin word judicium. which again means the one who rules on legal matters, right? So you can see that it comes from French and then Latin before that. Government. Government comes from Old French, gouverner. Gubernare, meaning to steer. To steer. What does the government do? It steers the population the way it wants to go, right? It steers you or the community or the society or the empire in the direction it wants to go, right? So, gubernare, meaning to steer. Beef. Beef comes from the Old French boeuf, right? Or the Latin word bovem. Mutton, molton, and molto. The meat, mutton is the meat from sheep, right? Pork, the meat from pigs, from the Old French pork, or the Latin word porcus. Veal, the meat from calves, from baby cows, from the Old French veal, and the Latin vitellus, meaning little calf. The word royal comes from, royal meaning related to the king or queen, comes from the French word royal and the Latin word regalis, which is also where we get the word regal. He's very regal. The king is very regal. It's like royal. Then we have liberty. Liberty, from the Old French liberté and the Latin word liberatus. Oh, no, sorry, libertas. Liberté and libertas, sorry. And justice, from the principle of fairness, coming from the Old French word justice and justida. Justidia. Ooh, that's a hard one to say. Justidia. Peace, coming from the French word paix or the Latin word pax. Yeah. Which is also, I think, where we get the word, let me see. Let me double check. Oh, no, not quite. No, that's slightly different. Never mind. Pag. Pax. Oh, it is. It is. Okay. So the word pact, if you know what a pact is an agreement, right? They made a pact. That means they made an agreement. And again, that word is related to this word peace. They made an agreement. Pax. Yeah, pax is related to the word pact, which is related to the word peace. Enemy. Inimicus, not a friend. And then from the ennemi French. I'm sure I'm butchering some of these pronunciations, but I'm doing the best I can. Army, from the Latin, French word armée and armata. Captain, capitan, capitaneus, meaning chief. Battle comes from the French word bataille and batture. Or might be battuere. To beat. To beat. Victory comes from the Old French word victory and the Latin word victoria. Treasure, from the Old French word trésor and the Latin word thesaurus. Look at that. What is a thesaurus? Do you guys know what a thesaurus is? What is a thesaurus? It's like a dictionary, but it's a dictionary of synonyms. Right? It's a dictionary of synonyms. And it's funny because the meaning of the word thesaurus is treasure. That's why I tell all of you, you should have and use a thesaurus. Because a thesaurus is like a book of treasure. If you think words are treasure, okay? If you want to understand words and find words, then get a Thesaurus app, thesaurus.com. And again, there it is. Thesaurus means treasure. Hello, Day Day. Good to see you. Letter. The word letter comes from the Old French lettre and the Latin word litera. Story, histori, and historia. So if you notice, French comes from what language? It comes from Latin, right? So these words come from both French and Latin. Latin is the earlier one, but French is important in the way it's pronounced and sometimes in the way it's spelled. Color, which is funny because look, this is an example. The word color. Why do Americans spell it C-O-L-O-R and the British spell it C-O-L-O-U-R? Well, they're both right in a way. They're both right, but they both have historical legitimacy. The spelling of C-O-L-O-U-R is related to the French word C-O-L-U-R, couleur. Okay, but the American spelling goes to the Latin spelling color. Look. Look at that. The Latin spelling, the original spelling is this. The French spelling is this. And the British spelling is a combination of the two, whereas the American spelling is just like the original Latin. Beauty, beauté, and bellus meaning pleasing, right? Beauty. So again, bellissima. What does that mean? I think beautiful in Italian. Ornella, are you there? Is that right? I believe, if I remember right. Yeah. And yeah, bella, bellissima. Again, beauty. The first two letters, B-E, they're related, right? Superlative. Ah. Okay. Thank you, Ornella. And dance. The word dance also comes from the French word danser. Right? So there you go. There's a bunch of words that come from French, including words like court and judge and government. Right? Liberty, peace, justice, enemy, army, captain, victory, treasure. These are all words that come from French. Okay? But look, it says one of the most distinctive outcomes of the Norman linguistic influx was the creation of the double vocabulary layers. So what does this mean? It means there's a two-tier vocabulary. So the everyday word, we have the common word, which is king. But we also have the legal word, which these words were the words they used in French Norman law. So in law, they don't call him the king. When they're writing their formal documents, they use the word sovereign. And cow. We don't say cow, we say beef, right? I don't want some cow, I want some beef, right? Sheep, mutton, ask. Ask is the common word. Demand or request is the legal term. Begin, commence, help, aid, or assist. So it was in this time period that we started using formal and informal versions of many, 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 many words. And it was largely because of this Norman language that came and became part of the law there. And so, yeah, lower class people would say the king, and upper class people would say the sovereign. Okay. We also have legal and government words like accuse, accuser, and accusare. Arrest, to stop, to arrest someone means to stop them. The plaintiff means a complainer. Ah, look at that, to complain. So when you're in a courtroom, you have the plaintiff, right, and the defendant, I believe, is the two terms, right? There we are, right there. And the plaintiff is the one who is complaining. Plain, Plain, is right there. Complain, right? The plaintiff. Defendant, right? Defendant, right? And then court and justice in parliament, which meant a speaking assembly, right? Those are all words that we get from French. Romance, virtue, honor, chivalry, even the names of the months. Interesting. That's interesting. I'll have to research that more, because January, February, those are actually Roman words, Latin words, not French. So I'll have to research why they say they're from Norman French. Because that, I don't know if that's correct, based on my knowledge. Okay, so anyway, so a lot of words come from Norman French, okay? ChatGPT can make some mistakes, but I doubt it's a mistake. I'm guessing it's probably not a mistake so much as it is not fully explained. I'm sure that it does have some Norman importance in how they were kept, or how they were pronounced, or how they were adopted into the language. But the roots originally predate the Normans, that's for sure. January comes from the Roman goddess, or god, sorry, Janus. February comes from the Roman festival Februa. So, yeah, those words come from before the Normans. Then we have the age of chivalry and medieval romance. Medieval. We have knights and courts in the language of honor and love. So this is between 1100 and 1500, these words, right? So we have the rise of courtly love poetry in southern France, the troubadours. These were people who would write love songs and love poetry, and they would sing and present their poems. Romance of Alexander and other Middle English romances emerge. So these were written stories that were romantic stories. And what does romantic mean, everybody? What does romantic mean? What does romantic mean? Anyone? Means in love. Okay, that's what many people think now. The word romantic, it means something about love. That's what we often think of. But actually, it does kind of mean that. But a romance is, originally it was a story. And it was a story that was written, and it would tell an adventure about a knight or a hero, right? So sometimes when we say, well, that's a very romantic story, or that's a very romantic image, because originally romance stories were these stories that they would write about a great knight or a great hero who would do great things. And so the stories had this vibe that was very mythical and powerful, right? But it actually also is because of the Romans were they loved good stories, and they loved to look at the past, and especially the Greek past. And the Greeks loved stories too. So the Romans were storytellers that told stories themselves. And that's the way that history was. For a long time, stories were told more than they were written because most people couldn't read. So most people would tell stories, right? And so storytelling was pretty important. That's why it comes from the Roman. We call it romantic because it comes from the Roman Empire, where they told stories a lot. But in this case, romance stories originally, in this time period, when you talk about romance stories, it just means a story about a knight who did something great or a hero who did something great. That's why we use romanzo for novels. Maybe. Yeah, could be. Yeah, I think that's probably true, Ornella. Yeah. But we also have the peak of chivalric culture, which means chivalry. And chivalry was this code of rules that you had to follow to be honorable. And again, that was romantic. Not everyone followed these rules. If you followed these rules, then you had honor. If you had honor, then you could be a hero. If you could be a hero, they could write stories about you that were romantic. Right? So, let's look at the words. The word chivalry. Chivalry. It means now, if I say he's very chivalrous, it means he opens the door for the girl. He pulls the chair out for the girl. He has good manners. He's a gentleman, right? That's a chivalrous person, right? But originally, the word chivalrous, it meant somebody who followed the strict rules of honor and combat as a knight. So if you're a knight, they had many, many rules you had to follow to be an honorable knight. Those were the rules of chivalry. But some of those rules involved things like when a princess needs to cross a muddy puddle, you put down your cloak for her to walk across it. So that's where we get these ideas of being, the men being honorable for the ladies, right? And then we have, so the word chivalry comes from the old French word chevalerie. What is it? Chevalerie. Oh, I can't pronounce it. Chevalerie. Chevalerie? Maybe? Chevalerie? Which comes from the word caballerius, which you would know in Spanish as what? Caballero, right? Which comes from the French word, the word cheval, meaning horse. Yeah. Then we have knight. The word knight, knecht, meaning a boy or a servant originally. It was originally a military servant, and usually a young boy. They started pretty young. Yeah. But it was, anyway, the word, yeah, I'm going to have to look at that word too, because it's interesting that it has the KN in it. I'm curious, does it have a Norse background as well? It does. Yeah. So just like the word knife, we pronounce it without the K now, but originally the K sound was pronounced. So I'm guessing that originally this word was pronounced knight, not night. Because it comes from the old Dutch and Frisian and German words knecht and knecht, and connect. Yeah, interesting. So all the other languages still pronounce the K. Only in English did we stop pronouncing the K and just pronounce the N instead. But before 1750, they used to pronounce the K. Before 1750, yeah. Chevrolet, that's another one. Good, Amir, yeah. Virtue, meaning moral excellence, from the French word vertu and the Latin word virtus, meaning manliness and strength and virtue. Honor, from the French word honneur and honorum, from Latin. Valor, valeur, and valere, verere, meaning to be strong. Gallant, galant, garer, to make merry. And this is a funny one because the word gallant, we still have the word gallant in English. But, well, I will. There's a story about a hat that has a very similar pronunciation. That one's not important. I'll tell you that one another time. Anyway, the word page. Page, when we think of the word page now, we mean the book page, right? This book has 100 pages. But originally the word page actually was a servant. A servant, usually to a knight, was the page. And again, that comes from the French word page and the Latin word pagio and the Greek word paidion, which meant a boy. You know, so you'd have a servant that would go take care of things for you. Squire was the knight's assistant. Above the page was the squire. So a knight had several people to assist him, including a squire, maybe more than one, and a page, maybe more than one. A herald, or to herald, is a word. A herald is a messenger. To herald means to announce something. And again, from the Old French herald and the Germanic Harewald, meaning an army leader, right? So the army leader would come, and what would the leader of the army say, right? He would yell to everybody, attack! He would announce, he would herald to everyone to attack. Right? So he was the herald, he was the messenger, he was the announcer. To joust is an old kind of combat on horse with the sticks, right? So they would ride against each other holding up a big, they have their horse in one hand and a big stick, you know, like a 10-foot, 12-foot stick, a pole that they would hold. Right, and try to knock the other guy off their horse or kill them. And again, joust, it comes from the Old French word jouster, which comes from the Latin word juxta, meaning next to, juxta, next to, because you had to get next to them to hit them. You had to get close. You had to get close, right? Two horses would ride at each other, and then you would try to hit each other. Courtly, romance, quest. A quest comes from the Old French word queste and quaerere, meaning to seek. Quaerere. Ooh, that's a hard one to pronounce. I'm not sure if it's quaerere or quaerere. To seek. A tournament, from the Old French, from tourner, meaning to turn or rotate. I wonder why it's called that. Let me look at that. Tournament. I'm sure I'm boring the hell out of many of you, but this is how I love to spend my time. Tournament. Tourney. To joust, to tilt, to turn around. Oh, well, that makes sense. Now I understand. To turn, to rotate. Why? Because what did the two horses do? Right? The two knights would be on horseback and they would ride against each other and try to hit each other. And when they would miss, or maybe they would hit, but not enough, they would go past each other. And then they'd have to do what? Turn around and come back again. So the word tournament comes from the word to turn, because after you made one pass, you have to turn around to make another pass at the knight. That's cool. That's a new one to me. Tournament, meaning to turn. I like that. I like that. Champion comes from the old French champion and the Latin word campionem, meaning gladiator. Right? So when you say he's the champion, basically you're saying he's a gladiator. Oh, don't love the French pronunciation only because my French is terrible. It's absolutely atrocious. I'm sure there's somebody here who's really embarrassed that I'm pronouncing their words so terribly. I have never had a French lesson. I have no idea, and I'm guessing the best I can based on what I know, and I don't know that much. So I have not studied very much French at all, ever. Fealty. Fealty is a word that means loyalty. We don't use it too much anymore, but occasionally. And it means loyalty to a lord is your fealty. So you have to show your fealty to a king, right? He expects you to show fealty. And the old French, see, here's a perfect example. Fealté? Fealté, or it comes from the Latin word fidelitas. Fidelitas, meaning like where we get the word fidelity from. Fidelity is related to the word fealty. Fidelis. And then we also have siege. Siege from the Latin word, from the French word siege, and from the Latin word sedere, meaning to sit down before a castle. Right? Because the army would have to come sit in front of the castle and just throw rocks and wait until the rocks broke through the wall and then they could attack. So that's funny. The word siege is related to the word sit. Because when you had to attack a castle, it took a long time to get in. So the army has to do what? They have to sit. Yeah, my Latin is slightly better than my French, but not perfect either. I took Latin for 1 year when I was 15, and I'm doing the best to remember pronunciations based on what I know from that, you know? But my Latin is not terrible many times. There are just a few words where it's like, what is that one? That's a hard one. It's usually AE combinations where I'm not sure. You know, it's in French. In the French language, sometimes I feel like it's almost like they go out of their way to add extra vowels. It's like they take a word and say, I like that word. How can we add 3 more vowels to this word? Yeah. Anyway. Prowess, meaning skill or bravery, comes from the French word prouesse and from the prudent, meaning brave or worthy. There was a famous chef, Paul Prudhomme. That's interesting. I never knew his name meant brave man. A vassal, feudal subordinate, an old French vassal, right, vassal, and medieval Latin vassalis, meaning a servant. Yeah, so what is a vassal? They're a servant. Banner, meaning a flag, from the Latin word banniere and bandum. My French pronunciation sometimes I think are too Latin because I never know how to pronounce the R's in French when it should be more nasal and less nasal. Okay, Ornella, I am on YouTube as well now, and there's no time limit on YouTube, so you're welcome to join over there if you want to. Yeah, I would like to hear more Romanian. I'm not sure what Romanian really sounds like. I want to hear more of it. Loyalty, or the word loyal, from the Old French and Latin. And look, that's interesting. The Latin word legalitatum. So this word, legal. Look, there's the word legal right there. So, yeah, look, to have loyalties to show that you follow the laws of a certain person, right? You follow this king's law. That's to show loyalty. Faithfulness to the law. Courtesy, courtesy, right? This is one there, qua, I think. Courtesy, or from the word court, means that you can't go to the king's court if you're not polite. Yeah, I know. That's why I suck at French. I've made up my mind I'll never be able to speak French because I cannot get the pronunciation. I'll never be able to get it. Again, to have courtesy. To have courtesy means to act in a way that would be acceptable at court with the king. So if you're at court with the king, then you must be polite. And adventurous comes from the Old French word, and I'm not sure if that's aventure. I believe that's the Latin there. Aventurious, meaning from the Old French, but aventure, I think, is actually the Latin. So anyway, there you go. Some words about love that come from that time period: amour, desire, passion, favor, all of these words. Look, mi amore, that's amore, right? When the moon hits the sky like a big pizza pie, that's amore. And that comes from the Latin word amor, meaning love. Desire, a strong feeling of wanting, comes from the French word désir and the Latin word desiderare. Passion, passion, from the Latin word meaning passio, which means suffering. Suffering, to suffer for the things that you love, is to have passion. Intense emotion. And then favor, favor, the Latin word favorem. So, to have favor, originally, now when we say favor, can you do me a favor, right? Can you do me a favor? I need a favor. But originally, we used to talk about this word to have favor, to have someone's favor. And that's also where we get the word favorite from. To have someone's favor meant they liked you. They would show you that they liked you, so they would give you something or do something for you. So I have the favor of the king means the king likes me. He does nice things for me. He does favors for me because I'm his favorite. Right? So to have the favor of the king means you're his favorite. Now he does favors for you. favor, favorite, to favor, to have favor. So there you go. And then we also have these words, the plain word and the elevated word, right? Brave, gallant, help, aid, assist, loyal, fealty, allegiance, seek, quest, right? So these are the simple versions and these are the elevated versions. And then these are some literary examples of romance stories. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, The Canterbury Tales, Les Morts d'Arthur. King Arthur, basically, this one. There are so many stories about King Arthur throughout European history. Okay, anyway, that was up to category 3. I'm going to stop there because I'm sure that there are some people who have passed out from boredom. So I will save you from further boredom. But I like this. It's, one of my little hobbies. And, I'll just give you a quick preview. The scientific revolution has many words that came about, like gravity, atom, species, oxygen, hydrogen, telescope, microscope, right? These were words that were invented at that time because that's when they created that thing, right? So we didn't have the words before that time. Vacuum, momentum, inertia, orbit, energy, temperature, pressure, experiment, analysis, hypothesis, theory, calculus, spectrum, right? And so many of those words come from Latin and Greek. Scientific method words, observation, data, evidence, right? Look, these are all Latin. Observatio, data, evidencia, conclusio, variabilis, constantum, constant, there you go. And to control comes from the word contra, meaning against, and rotellus, meaning a roll, to roll against. Interesting. Let me think about that for a minute. Meant a duplicate register for verification. Ooh, that's interesting. So they had 2 registers, and you had to put your name into both of them. And if you didn't put your name into both of them, for example, this is what they do in prisons, right? The prison has to have 2 names. They have someone signs the name in the when they check in, and someone signs the name when they check out. And they have to do that to have control of the prisoner, to make sure they know the prisoner is here at this time, and now he's left at this time. So a duplicate way to write it down, the roll was a piece of paper where they wrote down the names. When I was a kid in class, they would used to do roll call. Roll call was meaning attendance. Amir, take care, my friend. I'll see you next time. So to take roll is it means to take attendance in class, right? Roll call means who's here. So control means look at the first list of names and look at the second list of names, and do they match? If they match, then you have control. So anyway, and then I also have the age of piracy. Pirate, buccaneer, privateer, corsair, marooned, scallywag, plunder, loot, swashbuckler. And then we also have the age of the Industrial Revolution. Many words that come out of those time periods. So this is my new little project that I've been working on. The American Wild West. What's the next one? Did we finish the next one yet? I don't think I did. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. Okay, I have bored the audience to death now. And Miguel says it sounds the same. I don't know why. I don't understand what the problem could be, except maybe... Oh, wait a minute. That doesn't seem like it could be right. Miguel, are you still there, Miguel? And hello, Rosemary. I have desktop audio, mic aux, and microphone, and the mic aux and microphone both appear to be working, but I don't think that's right. Why would you want both the mic aux and the microphone at the same time? I think that's going to create some sort of a problem. And then I also have audio PC Live and desktop audio at the same time. That seems like it could be problematic as well. Well, Miguel, I don't know if you're still there, Miguel, but if you have time, maybe you can give me a hand sometime this week if you have time, or next week or something. Maybe we can track down and figure out what setting got changed somehow that the sound is off. I would like to figure that out. I hope it's not too terrible. Okay. And once again, it just bewilders me as to why there are only 37 people. It just is well, on the one hand, it doesn't bewilder me because I'm boring. But on the other hand, I just don't understand why so many people prefer voice rooms. I don't know. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna go. Romina, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Belen, it was good to see you again. And to everyone else who's still here, I appreciate it. Zoe, thank you. Dina, hello. Just looking in my audience here. Kira, hello. Ornella, thank you. Sonia, thank you for coming back. Yeah, I know, Kira. Yeah, they like to discuss something and attend conversations. I know. But all I would ask you to think about is what is your purpose in being on Hello Talk? If your purpose in being on Hello Talk is to improve your English, then certainly you should try to practice speaking and listening as often as you can. And I do think that's good. But occasionally, I think you should think about it like, this person has something that I can learn from. Right? So, for example, it's the difference between a classroom and a discussion room. Okay? And I'm a teacher. That is my job. So, as a teacher, I prefer to teach. And that means I'm in front of the classroom, and the classroom is there to listen to me, to study, to learn. So, yeah. Anyway, I would only ask you to consider the value of going somewhere to listen to someone say something about something instead of going to one of my rooms where I have directed content and experience and knowledge about what you're trying to learn. That's what I would only ask you to consider, is going somewhere to do something is not always valuable. You know, just because you're there talking in a room doesn't mean that you're actually making any progress. Okay? Anyway. All right, I'm going to go. Thank you guys for watching. If you didn't know already, here is my website and here is my YouTube. Go sign up. I think very soon I might try something new. I might start announcing my live streams only on my website. So on my website, if you subscribe, then I have your email. Many people are telling me that they're not getting the notifications for my live streams or my voice rooms on HelloTalk. So I might test just doing a subscriber list on my website. So if you want a notification, you should go subscribe to my website so that you know when I'm going to be on, because I think I'm going to start that sometime soon. Thank you, Ornella. Grazie mille. Okay, I'm going to go. Thank you guys. I'll talk to you next time. Okay? Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you, Zoe. Bye-bye.